Winning Blueprint presents.
In the lab room, the market. Seattle Seahawks.
Welcome to the market. You're in the lab room. I'm your host, Lou. Thank you for joining me. Welcome to the market. Also known as, and more commonly known as, free agency in the National Football League. The NFL's one-stop shop for all positions related to the field. I will be talking to you today about the Seattle Seahawks. What a tremendous 2012 season they had. The sky's the limit. The future looks infinitely bright for the Seattle Seahawks. Look, any team that does not win the Super Bowl has changes to make and upgrades to make. And even a Super Bowl champion needs to make tweaks, has guys to resign, has decisions to make. And so the Seattle Seahawks are no different. They have some things that they need to improve on, but this is a really good football team. It's young, it's talented, it's hungry. They're going in the right direction, and they have cap space. They're part of the VIP group. The VIP money spending group, very important pursuers. And so the Seattle Seahawks have some money to spend. Right here I have my comprehensive list of every single free agent available in the market in the 2013 offseason for all the teams to select from. So I will be using that list to help decide what free agents the Seattle Seahawks might target in free agency. And also, I'll be using my handy-dandy, trusty big board, which has every team in the National Football League listed on it. And among the topics on my big board will be notable free agents. Those are your in-house free agents that need to be signed back or allowed to walk away. Then you have team needs or positions of need, and also players at those positions of need for said team, in this case, the Seattle Seahawks. So let's talk about the Seattle Seahawks and what I think they need to do in the offseason, in free agency, in the market to make their team better in 2013. And I will be consulting my big board at all times when talking about the Seattle Seahawks and what they need to do in free agency. And so we're going to list all of their notable free agents. Look, these aren't all of the free agents that they have, restricted and unrestricted. These are just the ones that I pointed out and picked out as ones that I think are important, that are notable and noteworthy to talk about, whether the Seahawks should retain their services or allow them to walk away. We'll go through them one by one, talk about what the Seahawks need to do. I'll give you my opinion, and I'll tell you what I think the Seahawks are going to do with each of these free agents. So, Alan Branch, Stephen Hauschka, Leroy Hill, Jason Jones, and Marcus Trufant. Let's start with Alan Branch. I think that the Seahawks should retain his services. Here's a guy that started just about every game for you in the 2012 season, and he's been pretty solid and reliable for you since coming over from Arizona. Look, Alan Branch is replaceable. He doesn't do anything eye-popping, and again, you can't look at numbers when deciding what the impact is for a defensive tackle. His numbers aren't going to wow you. He's not a guy that's going to get a lot of pressure on the quarterback. He's solid in the run game. He does yeoman-like work. He's not going to really stand out, but again, he's solid. If you decide to retain him, fine. If not, that's okay as well. Just know that if you don't keep him, you're going to need to replace him in that defensive rotation. He's a guy that started for you, so you're going to need to go out and get a starting caliber defensive tackle. Stephen Hauschka. Look, this guy was making field goals at an 89% clip last season, 24 of 27. There's no reason not to retain his services. I don't see why you wouldn't bring Stephen Hauschka back. This is a guy you need to re-sign. Look, don't allow yourself to be a team that doesn't have a reliable field goal kicker. Steven Hoska has been pretty solid and reliable. He did get injured toward the end of the season, but he's solid. He's reliable. Resign him. Leroy Hill. Here's a guy that's starting to get up there in age. He's 30 years old. He's solid. Again, not a guy that's going to be a difference maker, but he's solid. But he doesn't fit in with the line of Seattle Seahawks defenders. The Seattle Seahawks have a lot of playmaking defenders on that side of the football, and he's just average. And look, again, I've been saying this for a long time now. Your team is not going to be filled out by Pro Bowl players. Everyone's not going to be an All-Pro. Everyone isn't going to be a difference maker. You need some guys that are just going to be solid, that are just going to go about doing their job. You're not going to hear a lot out of them, but they're going to be where they're supposed to be, when they're supposed to be there. They're going to be solid pieces. You need to have your roster made up of a lot of these guys, and Leroy Hill is one of those guys. If you want to keep this guy as a veteran presence, as well as a guy that can be productive for you, fine. If you want to go in a different direction, a younger direction, I understand that as well. Jason Jones. Here's a guy that, when healthy, is productive. Problem is, he's often injured. And I think the Seahawks would love to retain his services, but I think the Seahawks aren't enamored and in love with the fact that he's always injured. And you can't get production out of someone that's hurt. And so I think Jason Jones is going to be allowed to walk. He's an athletic defensive tackle, which is a guy that fits in the mold of what the Seahawks like to do. You know, a long, wiry guy that can get to the quarterback from the defensive tackle position. He's stout enough against the run to not hurt you, but he can be blocked in the run game. So I think the Seahawks are going to move on here. Jason Jones is probably not going to be back with the Seahawks in 2013. Marcus Trufant. Here's a veteran guy that has played every snap of his career with the Seattle Seahawks. I think that his last game in Seattle has been played already. I think he's going to move on. I think that the Seahawks are going to look for another cornerback, someone that is younger. And I think they're going to look for a guy that could come in and potentially start in a pinch. They may go with a veteran to replace him. I just think that they feel like they run their course with Marcus Trufant, and they're going to look to move on. And I think Marcus Trufant might find work somewhere else in a limited role capacity for someone, but I don't think he'll be back with the Seattle Seahawks in the 2013 season. So let's look at the positions of need for the Seattle Seahawks. You've got defensive tackle, defensive end, wide receiver, and outside linebacker. Look, have the wide receiver position in parentheses because honestly, I don't know if the Seattle Seahawks have to get a receiver in free agency. If you want to be nitpicky, they don't have a number one receiver. They have a bunch of 2s and 3s. And so they don't have a guy that stands out as, hey, we got to make sure we stop this guy. Sidney Rice is probably as close as you get to that. Golden Tate has his standout moments. Doug Baldwin was your leading receiver 2 seasons ago. So you have a lot of guys that are just solid. No one stands out above the rest of the group. And so if you want to be nitpicky, then you need a number one receiver. But if the Seahawks aren't really pressed to go out and get a receiver, I understand that. If they want to address that through the draft, I get that. So I don't know if receiver is that pressing of a need, but I put it down because you could get a receiver that is a number one, and currently you don't have one on your roster. But let's start at defensive tackle. I think that at defensive tackle, if you don't re-sign Alan Branch, you need to go out and get a starting caliber defensive tackle. Simple as that. And guys that I have listed on this list are Desmond Bryant out of Oakland. And look, you could probably get Desmond Bryant on the cheap. He just got in trouble with the law just about 2 weeks ago. And so Desmond Bryant might come on the cheap. Not a lot of teams know about Desmond Bryant. I'm thinking his stock is starting to rise, though. I think a lot of teams feel like they can get him on the cheap, and he's a really solid defender for the Raiders. He can get after the quarterback. He can help you in the run game as well. I think Desmond Bryant is starting to become a hot commodity in free agency. That's a guy that you could look at. You could also look at a guy like Cullen Jenkins. He's already released, and so he's already making a world tour around the National Football League, checking out teams and locations. He'd make a great fit in Seattle. I think he's a guy that's getting up there in age, but he's still highly productive, and I think he could help you, and I think he'd actually be an upgrade over Alan Branch at the defensive tackle position. You look at Glenn Dorsey. Here's a guy that was a high draft pick by the Kansas City Chiefs. Never really panned out in Kansas City the way they wanted him to. He never lived up to the high draft status that he had. But again, he came in as a 4-3 defensive tackle. The Chiefs switched to a 3-4. He never really fit into what the Chiefs were doing. If he gets back into a 4-3 defense, maybe he can turn into a defensive force that the Chiefs thought they were getting when they drafted him out of LSU. You look at a guy like Walker, and I'm talking about Vance Walker from the Atlanta Falcons. Now, a lot of people know about Vance Walker. Here's a guy that did not really play in a starting capacity for the Falcons, but when he was on the field, highly productive. Here's a guy that can get to the quarterback. He can stop the run. He's really solid. And if you're looking for a starter, I don't know if Vance Walker is your guy or not. Maybe if given a chance to start, he could emerge as a really capable player of starting in the National Football League. I'm not sure, but here's a guy that can fit into a defensive rotation. If you're looking for someone else to come in and just fill a void, maybe Vance Walker is the guy you're looking for. If you have someone in mind already in-house on your roster that can take Alan Branch's spot and he can step in and just be a rotational guy, Vance Walker could be who you're looking for. Here's a guy, though, that I think you could really use and could come in and really help your defensive line immensely. Roy Miller out of Tampa Bay. Buccaneers are not re-signing Roy Miller. I think that's a mistake. Roy Miller is a guy that I think could really help you. He fits exactly what you're trying to do. I think he's a difference maker along your defensive line. You plug him in there next to Red Bryant and, Irvin and all those guys that you have on your defensive line. If Chris Clemens can come back from that ACL injury, you could have a very formidable defensive line, and Roy Miller could really help enhance your defensive line and get pressure on the quarterback as well as help you stop the run. So that's the defensive tackle market for the Seattle Seahawks. If you don't bring Alan Branch back, you have some guys that are out there that can help you fill that void. You look at the defensive end market for the Seattle Seahawks, and I think with Chris Clemens getting up there in age and him tearing his ACL, he may never be the same. Let's face it. He's over 30. ACL tears are tough to come back from by themselves. Not added to the fact that he's over 30, you don't heal as quick when you're up there in age. And so who knows if you're going to get the same Chris Clemens back. Anyway, you still need a guy that can get to the quarterback. And so I think you could use an upgrade at defensive end. Bruce Irvin is solid, but you could use a guy like a Cliff Averill. Now, look, I don't know if you're trying to fork over the money that he's asking for. He's asking for an awful lot of money for a guy that's not that elite of a pass rusher. So I don't know if you're going to be in the Cliff Averill market, but if you're looking for an old, wily vet, there's some guys on the market. Dwight Freeney, John Abraham come to mind. These are guys that are looking to win. Seattle is a winning program right now. You could use those guys as wily veterans that could come in that might still have something left in the tank. You're looking for a younger alternative, Michael Bennett or Wallace Gilberry out of Cincinnati. Now, Wallace Gilberry, I don't think is a starting caliber defensive end, but he's the guy that can come in and be a rotational guy. If you're looking for someone to supplement your defensive line, come in and give you some situational pass rushing, Wallace Gilberry is your guy. He got 6.5 sacks last year for the Cincinnati Bengals. If you're looking for a guy to start for you, come in and can get immediate pressure on the quarterback, then you are looking to Michael Bennett of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. This guy got 9 sacks last year. This guy can get to the quarterback. He's a player that is a difference maker. He forces turnovers. He gets to the quarterback. I like Michael Bennett a lot, and I like him in a Seattle Seahawks uniform. Here's a guy that can help you immensely if you're looking for a young defensive end that can make a difference along your defensive line. Now, at the wide receiver position, I don't really think you need to address that in free agency. If you like, you can. I don't think you're going to be in the market for Mike Wallace or a guy like Greg Jennings. And those are the number ones that are on the market. There aren't any other number ones. So if you're not looking for one of those two guys, and I think you've priced yourself out of that market, I don't think you're looking to spend that kind of money on a receiver, then I don't think you need to be in the market for a receiver. You have enough 2s and 3s, and everyone else in the market are 2s and 3s, and so I don't think you need to go that route. So let's look at outside linebacker, because we talked about Leroy Hill being a free agent. I don't know if he's going to be back, and I think you're going to look to get a lot younger at that position. I mean, look, you've got Wagner out there at linebacker. You've got some young guys. I think that you need to get a younger linebacker than Leroy Hill. And if you're going to go that route, there are several options in free agency that I think could be solid. Philip Wheeler comes to mind. You also look at a guy like Thomas Howard, ultra productive. And look, he's a tackling machine. Both of these guys, Philip Wheeler and Thomas Howard, are tackling machines. They're good in space. They're solid guys. They come in, they can help you. You're looking for a veteran presence. Darryl Smith would replace Leroy Hill, and I think Darryl Smith still has a lot of football left in that tank. And so there are guys out there at outside linebacker that could help you. And I think that the Seahawks just need to explore all their options. Brad Jones is another guy for the Green Bay Packers that could help you. And so there's guys out there. You just have to look around and see what is available. And I think the Seahawks will make some sound decisions. They've been really good at making sure they find guys that fit what they want to do. And without Gus Bradley, we're going to see what this defense looks like in the 2013 season. But I think that the Seahawks are sitting pretty right now. Enough cap space to do whatever they really want to do in free agency, and enough draft picks to really impact this team. And they're really going in a very positive direction right now. Seattle is looking like a team that's going to challenge the 49ers for the NFC West division crown. And so that's going to do it for the Seattle Seahawks. Don't be afraid to spend some money in free agency. Again, you have enough draft picks to really do damage in the draft. Just use free agency to supplement your roster, fill in some voids that you may have, some question marks that you may have. And if you don't address it in free agency, there's always the draft. And so that's the Seattle Seahawks in the market.
Seattle Seahawks, the market.